Good. Okay. Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. Welcome to our webinar. It's called The Business of Seeds, Some Commercial Considerations. Thanks very much for being here. My name is Steph Hughes, and I'm the Regional Coordinator in Atlantic Canada for the Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security. By now, many of you will be familiar with our program. It's a national program which aims to increase the quality, quantity, and diversity of seed grown organically across Canada. The program was launched in 2013 thanks to the championship of Mrs. Gretchen Bauta and the generosity of the W. Garfield Weston Foundation. We owe them our sincere thanks as we continue in this, our fourth field season of promoting and advancing resilient regional seed systems. We're lucky to have the guidance of two national partners on this program, USC Canada and Seeds of Diversity Canada. So please do check them out online and see the amazing things that they're doing for seed and for seed savers across the country. This is our third webinar in the series, Seeing Seed from Every Angle. We developed the series out of a recognition for the many roles that seeds play in our lives, from sustenance to livelihood to being part of our family, social, and cultural lives. We wanted to take advantage of an opportunity this year to look at seed through a lens that's broader than just production and really celebrate the seed in a number of different ways. So here's a little peek at what we've done and what's upcoming with this year's series. You can find full details on our website, seedsecurity.ca, and I hope you'll be able to join us for the next and final webinar in the series. To date, we've completed 12 webinars over the last 3 years, and all of these recordings are available online. You can access many hours of high-quality seed education by seed leaders across the continent by visiting seedsecurity.ca. The exact links to the webinar are on your screen now. And we're recording this webinar, and it will be added to the list of available videos as soon as possible. For those of you who missed the last webinar and who are waiting for that recording, I have to apologize because I'm having some difficulties with my video software, which has led to some delays in my getting the last webinar posted. So as soon as that one and this one are complete, I will send out a link. So thanks for your patience on that. A few technical details before we get started. If you're having any trouble hearing us, you may want to adjust your speakers. You can do that with the speaker volume icon at the top of your screen or through your computer and speaker settings at home. If you've tried that and you're still having technical trouble hearing the audio through your computer, I would be happy to provide you with a conference line so that you can call in for the audio. So please just send me a little message in the chat pod and I will provide you with a conferencing line. I am very pleased to welcome our speakers for today's webinar, Sebastian Aguilar and Patrice Fortier. Unfortunately, Tom Stearns, who was originally scheduled to present today on scaling up, had to pull out of the webinar. Fortunately for us, Sebastian is stepping up, and in Tom's absence, he will extend his presentation to talk a bit about his operation, Chickadee Farm, and how they scaled up their seed production. So following Sebastian's presentation, we'll hear from Patrice on developing a market for regional seed. Our format today will be to hear the presenters separately, and after each presentation, we'll entertain a short Q&A with them. So if you have questions for either Sebastian or Patrice, you can type them into the chat pod, and after each presentation, I'll pull from the pool of questions, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. We've set aside about an hour and 15 minutes for today's webinar. So we'll get started for now with Sebastian. Sebastian Aguilar owns and operates Chickadee Farm in Talent, Oregon with his wife Kelly Galino and their 3 kids. Chickadee Farm is certified organic and focuses on diverse contract vegetable seed production. Sebastian also enjoys teaching about farming and for 3 years was the lead instructor for new farmers at the Organic Farm School on Whidbey Island, Washington. He continues to assist the Organic Farm School as well as volunteers as a board member for the Organic Seed Alliance. So there you go, Sebastian. Go right ahead.
All right. Great. Well, good day, everybody. Glad to be here with you. Hopefully I can share a little bit of how our farm business has grown into the seed business and help you if that's your personal goal for your own farms. I'll tell you just a little bit about our farm to start off with. We were a fresh vegetable farm for a long time and still sell a little bit of fresh vegetables, mostly to grocery stores at this point. But the last year or two, we've made it up to 90% focusing on seed production We do a wide range of crops. We've got lettuce and brassicas. Here in this picture, we also do a lot of tomato and pepper. We do melon, we do flowers, we do beans, we do a little bit of everything. We do onion and carrot as well. And those cover the main ones. So I didn't prepare any slides about scaling up. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about that, and then I'm going to talk, for the most part, about working with seed companies and what to think about as you enter into those relationships and contracts. In terms of scaling up, you know, it's really not that different than scaling up for any other type of farm business. It's just obviously you're focused specifically on seed. And usually when we're talking about scaling up, you know, two things come to mind. One, you've got to have the knowledge, which leads to the confidence in being able to grow larger plots successfully. And oftentimes that also means, you know, how do you harvest and process a larger quantity of seed in an efficient manner. And oftentimes tools come into play with that. And, you know, that's always a challenge when you're straddling the, am I a small-scale grower, am I going to be a large-scale grower? That in-between realm is always a difficult place to be as a farmer because equipment is expensive, but, you know, so, you know, a lot of what we do is we either fabricate our own equipment, we look for used equipment. Every once in a while we'll invest in something new. And I'll try to touch on that real briefly. So I only have a few minutes for this portion of the talk, but I'll be open to any questions afterwards. So as with most farm enterprises, you know, knowledge is step one. And so, and the best way to get that, considering that, you know, all our farms have their unique microclimate, is to do lots of trials. So if you're interested in seed production on a larger scale, you definitely want to start with seed production on a small scale and ensure that you have the appropriate microclimate for that particular species. Obviously, one of the bigger concerns is with the dry seeded crops is dry weather during the harvest period. So you may have that, you may not have that. If you don't have that, you know, you can explore whether to grow those crops under cover or explore other, you know, risk management strategies for that. But that's often a limiting factor for a lot of folks. Even if you can grow seed on a small scale successfully, you always have to consider, you know, if you plant out a quarter acre or something of a plot, you know, you may not be able to protect it in the same way that you can protect a small area. So you just want to be sure that before you invest a lot of time and energy and money into a crop, you know, that you're relatively guaranteed conducive weather for the harvest. And just like with any other crop production, you're not just considering the weather, but also disease and pests. With seed crops, you know, sometimes those pests and disease can be slightly different than the fresh market versions. You also have to consider isolation, you know, who is around you. As a fresh market grower, it doesn't usually really matter in terms of pollination, but if you're in an area with a high density of diverse farms, you know, maybe that may have an impact on what you can or cannot grow. And then you also, you know, want to make sure that you're scaling up because it's going to be profitable for you. And just as with the risk management, you know, even if you can do it on a small scale, it might not be profitable on a larger scale because the yields are going to vary substantially depending on your microclimate. And so you just want to take a year, maybe 3 years, and record, you know, what are your average yields for certain crops. You know, does that make sense on a larger scale for your farm business? If it doesn't, you know, continue doing it as a hobby or as a public service, but obviously you wouldn't want to rest your business foundation on that. And the other thing to learn, besides just whether you can grow a crop or not, or how well it yields or not, is each crop has its own unique needs in terms of how you are going to thresh it and how you're going to clean the seed. And some are much easier than others. And so especially for the range of crops that are more difficult to thresh or more difficult to clean the seed, you have to decide whether or not you're going to invest in the equipment that can do that, or whether someone in your area can do that for you, or whether or not you need to pass on that crop and stick with a simpler crop that you can more readily thresh and clean appropriately. So, luckily there's a lot of crops that you don't need a lot of high-tech tools for. If you can build a lot of screens yourself, you can buy a basic set of screens for not that much money. Fans are easy to get. Those are the two obviously most important tools in seed cleaning, and oftentimes when you're working with a seed company, they just need it cleaned to a certain level and they'll have the equipment to do the finished cleaning. So as long as you can get it to 98%, you're set. A lot of times you can thresh things just by driving the tractor or a truck over them. A lot of times a small shredder machine, chipper shredder type that has flails on it will work great for a lot of things. So, you can get a really basic setup that can, work through 100 pounds or several hundred pounds without being too inefficient, and that's good. If you're going to start getting the more challenging crops or a bigger scale, then it's going to be really hard to find appropriate tools that are new and affordable for that scale. And so, that's when you start looking online or going to auctions or looking just for used equipment, whether they're, older all-crop, Salus-Chalmers all-crop, combine type machines, or small plot combines, or just any old combine that maybe you're going to run it stationary. Usually you can buy a used older combine for a few $1,000s that, will serve the needs that you have, especially if you're mechanical and you can, keep them running. Yeah, I think, we've been lucky where we've created our basic set, built a lot of the tools ourselves, and then we've been able to find a few key pieces of equipment used at affordable prices and just invest some time and mechanics time into fixing them up. So I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to just stop right there for scaling up, but feel free to ask me some questions at the end. And what I didn't express explicitly that I should is probably, as you're trialing these things and exploring whether or not it makes sense for your farm or your climate, make sure to keep good records, and those records will be able to inform you later on whether or not it's appropriate to scale up. So my original plan was to talk more about working with seed companies and seed contracting and how that process works. And I find it most helpful to realize, that it's really a business relationship, and business relationships need the same kind of attention that any relationships need. If you are scaling up, usually a seed company is going to be your first and primary customer for a while. There's a few seed companies, 4 seed companies, and but usually it's even a larger scale of farmer who's producing for those types of seed distribution houses. And so, once you're moving up past the very small scale, usually it's going to be a smaller seed company or a small to mid-sized seed company that's going to be your customer. And as with any business relationship, ideally it's mutually beneficial. You always want to put yourself into their shoes. They want to buy and resell good seed, and you're hoping to grow and sell good seed. So if you can work together, symbiotically, then it'll work out great. And the keys to that are, like with any relationship, communication and expectations need to be clear. So you want to be vocal. You want to ask questions. You want to just make sure that you fully understand what their needs are, what you can offer, and that you're communicating that. All of those things are important. Obviously, quality has to be good, and I put seed and service here because both are really important. And we'll get into more about the details of what I mean by quality seed or quality service. But it's important to keep both of those things in mind. Obviously, the responsibility of the seed company is to pay you and pay you on time. That's important. I've had the good luck of never really having problems with that, but I have had other peers who have had problems, and so you want to feel confidence in who you're working with. And eventually, like I said, the more you work with this company, and usually this company is not an abstract company, it's one person that you're focused on building that relationship with. The goal is to build something that's really collaborative because it's an ever-changing world, and if you can explore how to grow together, that's an ideal scenario. And so with any relationship, you want to look at, well, what's the role and responsibility of each person in that relationship? And so here's a list for the seed grower. The first one is what we just talked about in terms of scaling up, in that, ensuring that you have the knowledge and the infrastructure to follow through on whatever you're going to commit to with the seed company. They're expecting that if you take on a contract for 50 pounds of sunflower seed, that you're going to be able to deliver 50 pounds of sunflower seed without a problem. And that knowledge of what you can and cannot do is going to help you choose contracts that are, appropriately match your capacity, whether that's, skill, isolation, climate, equipment, all those things that we just talked about. Oftentimes when you're getting into the business, what's going to happen is the seed company is going to propose a contract or send you a contract. Make sure you read it all the way through, make sure you understand it, make sure you think about your needs. Everything's negotiable. You don't have, it's not a all or nothing with any of these contracts. And so, look at it with an eye towards, does this serve me? And if it doesn't, feel free to bring it up and ask to amend the contract. And that's usually not a problem, as long as, the company feels like they're on the same page about whatever particular issue you're bringing up. To be a good partner to a seed company, you want to respect and protect the work that they do in terms of breeding or finding unique varieties. And, usually this will be written into the contract, but, most seed companies will ask you not to use the stock seed for other purposes rather than providing them seed, or, don't sell this seed to other companies without their permission. Obviously this depends on how much work or they've put into that stock seed or into that variety, and whether it's, really proprietary or just something they picked up and everybody already has access to. That just all depends. But if they do ask you to protect something, then obviously to be a good business partner, you're going to want to do that as well. Roguing is always important. No matter, in most seed lots, there's going to be a certain percentage of plants that don't, express the intention of that variety as the seed company would like. And so, it's always there's always this tension as a seed producer on contract. The more you rogue, obviously you're knocking your yields down. But if you don't rogue, you're dropping the quality of the overall lot. And so that's something to discuss before you even plant, and it should be outlined in the contract, what's the percentage of plants to rogue. And when you agree on a price, assume that you're going to rogue that percentage of plants. You don't want to feel like roguing is hurting your bottom line. So take that into consideration with the price. And obviously, you can never predict how much is going to be needed to rogue, especially if it's a variety you're growing for the first time or they're sending you. So, we can talk about this more, but there might be like a range of, okay, well, I'm expected to rogue 3% automatically, and then if it's, up to 6%, then maybe the price goes up, 3% or et cetera, and then, you just need to keep open lines of communication with that seed company about how things are going and how you're feeling about it and what needs to happen, because obviously their reputation will be built on the seed and they want a good job, and so work together on making that happen. When we talk about good quality seed, we're talking about good germ, strong vigor, disease-free, and weed seed-free. Those are the basics. That's often a new learning curve for seed growers is, what diseases are transferable by the seed and which ones are not, and then being able to identify those in the field and work accordingly with those. Lots of things can affect good germination, plant nutrition, weather, lygus bugs. There's a lot of things that, as fresh market growers, or you don't really consider these factors that go into the seed development. But as a seed grower, you're going to want to be able to recognize those and feel confident that as you grow a crop, that germination is going to be a good one. And so going back to scaling up and doing those trials, not only do you want to take a plant through to the seed and harvest the seed and weigh the seed and say, oh, I did it successfully. The final step there is to germinate that seed, do a germination test, and make sure that, that level of that quality is there. Checking in regular is the key of any relationship. So, if you're working with somebody, monthly check-ins are ideal. We all get busy. I oftentimes don't do that, but especially with all our technology these days, if you've got a smartphone and you're out in the field, take a picture and text it to the seed rep and just give them little updates. The sooner, especially if there's a crop failure going to happen, the sooner they know that that's not going to be available, the sooner they can let the staff that's putting a catalog together or working with farmers, let everybody know that that seed's not going to be available. Maybe they'll have it coming from somewhere else, but it's definitely going to impact how their business operates. And if you wait till the last second to tell them, it's often a difficult and frustrating thing to find out. Once you've done your initial, whoops.
We lost it there. Hold on. Let me see if I can get it back.
Okay. Once you do your initial harvest and initial cleaning, most seed companies are going to want you to send the sample in right away so they can assess that germination. And then, sometimes it's nice as a seed grower to wait until that initial germination test comes back, because you're going to put more time into cleaning that seed. And that germination test will help you decide with A, whether or not it's worth cleaning, and then B, how much you will need to clean. So is everybody else seeing what I'm seeing on the screen?
You should be back to your roles and responsibilities slide.
I don't know. Adobe Connect is doing something on my computer.
Oh, okay. You can't see your slide at this point?
No, but it looks like it just reloaded.
Okay. So I think that's probably just maybe a slow Wi-Fi connection on your end, and probably it will pop up shortly.
Okay. Yep, I'm back on track.
Okay.
So once you know that it's good seed and you're going to send it in, you've got to clean it to the agreed upon level. That's usually stated in the contract. You want to package and ship the seed, and however they want it done, you want to do that professionally, and so it minimizes any risk during transport, and it's easy to identify on their end. And then obviously you're going to invoice them like you would any business that you're selling to. You know, on the other end of this relationship, the seed company rep has their own roles. You know, they're looking out for the best interests of their company, and so their job is to assess your experience and capacity. You know, they're looking at their whole catalog and deciding what they need grown, and, you know, they'll offer you potential contracts based on that. One of their biggest roles is to provide you with quality stock seed. And most of the time they do that, but, you know, I definitely have had experiences where the stock seed that comes in is either it's either low germ, or it needs a lot of roguing, or it's actually totally the wrong crop. All kinds of things can happen. There's lots of room for human error in every step of this process. And so, you know, you just have to have good faith. But one important thing that you can discuss with your seed company is especially seed-borne diseases. So most of the larger companies now, and even some of the smaller ones, they'll go ahead and do disease testing, and, you know, maybe they'll do some seed treatment, and they'll do organic seed treatment if you're an organic farm, so that, you know, you're minimizing the risk of importing any new seed-borne diseases onto your farm. You know, ideally a company is able to offer some production information from previous growers. You know, I would say more often than not you don't get that, but it's always worth asking, because obviously if it's a new variety, that's always very helpful. Oftentimes they'll come out for a visit, usually just once a year, you know, take a look at the garden, see how things are doing, you know, try to get a sense of who you are as a grower, and you know, what type of quality you're able to have out in the field. You know, they're in charge of receiving that seed and running it through quality control and assessing its quality, and then obviously doing the finish cleaning and making the payments. You know, it's helpful as a seed grower to understand, you know, what the seed company is going through. Obviously, they want to manage their inventory as best they can, so they want to make sure they have inventory, but then not enough. You're trying to avoid, when you're a seed company, having too much inventory, you know, because even though it's not highly perishable, it is perishable, and seed's expensive, so you want to overbuy seed, but then you also don't want to run out and have to back order things or postpone sales until the following year. And, you know, as a seed grower, you're trying to assist them in that by not overproducing or underproducing. You know, you don't always have control over how that's going to end up, but you do have control over how much you plant. You know, their reputation is going to be built on your quality. And so, you know, if you start submitting poor quality seed, you know, they're going to hear about it from whoever is buying that seed, and they're not going to, you know, tell that person, oh, well, it's, you know, from so-and-so, but what's going to happen is they're slowly going to buy less from you, or maybe nothing from you, if, you know, what you're sending them is giving them a bad name. And then obviously they're, you know, all looking to be a little unique, have unique varieties, and so being able to work with them into trialing new things and experimenting with new things and protecting those new things, then, you know, then you make a good partner for them. So, you know, lots of situations can happen that throw a stick in the spokes for all of this. Obviously, crop failures is one of them. You don't want to have too many, both for your bottom line and for the seed company. But, you know, you're doing your best always to manage these things. But like I said, the best thing you can do is just be in touch with them right away, let them know what's happening so they can prepare. There are seed companies out there who, if you've done everything right and there's still a crop failure, for one reason or another, a lot of times or sometimes, they'll share in that risk and in that loss. That's something that you would want to get out front in the contract as much as possible. It's always worth asking, even if it's not in the contract. But, we are in a situation where generally the farmer is taking the risk on, for the burden of production. And obviously some seed companies are more open to sharing that risk than others. And there's, in our system right now, there's no requirement of that, but something to consider. We talked a little bit about before stock seed. It's worth a conversation early on, what happens if, the stock seed, has low germ or needs extra roguing or is the wrong thing, how do you manage that? Because, most of them will, at a minimum, pay whatever costs you've incurred, at a certain point. Let's say they order a green butterhead lettuce and they send you stock seed, you plant it in the greenhouse, and all of a sudden you've got a bunch of flats of a red lettuce. Obviously they sent you the wrong thing, and what they're going to say is, oh, well, we're really sorry. What do we owe you for producing all this lettuce in the greenhouse? And you have to, come up with that number. What that doesn't do is also reflect the lost opportunity cost that you were counting on several $1,000s of income from that crop that now it no longer exists. Where the right balance is, I can't really say. It's something that I think is a moving target and is different for each grower and each relationship with the seed company, but it's something to consider. You do have to watch out for crossing before you plant anything. Make sure you feel like you have the isolation both from other cultivated varieties on other farms, but then also, make sure that you know what wild species could potentially cross with your crop and that those are not a problem. And then overproduction, most companies will buy, maybe up to 1.5 times what you produce. Every once in a while they'll buy more if they feel like they can sell it, but at one point, they're not really required to buy more, and depending on how the contract is, they may not want you to sell that if it's an exclusive variety to another company. If it's a more generic variety, you can usually get that. They'll usually be fine with you selling it to another customer because it's not proprietary, but that is something to consider. You can't always sell all of your overproduction. And then low germ, like I said, if you have really hot weather during a flowering period or really cold weather, or you have lygus bug, or some nutrient deficiencies will cause low germ. It's just something to watch out for. So I'm pretty much done with time, I think, but I took out one of my contracts with a seed company and listed, each of the little paragraphs that's included in that contract. And we've talked about, most of these things, but obviously it's got to describe the crop variety, the amount that's requested, the price that's going to be paid, the minimum germination that's acceptable, and most companies will, require a set isolation distance. Some require more than others, and so, you just have to honor what their request is, and also whatever you think your microclimate needs, because a lot of it depends on, what's around you. Who's providing the stock seed, and what can you do with that stock seed? How much roguing? We talked about that. Who's responsible for production? Most companies will reserve the right to come and inspect the crop or the field. We talked about exclusivity, isolation. Some of them will require extra isolation if there's GMOs in the area. Some of them will test for GMO. and require it to pass before they will buy the seed. You know, when are you going to send a seed sample and how many seeds are going to be included? When do they need all the seed by? Who's going to pay for the shipping? How do they want it bagged and labeled? You know, what's the expectation? You know, a lot of times they can't sell seed if it has noxious weeds, and so if you have noxious weeds on your farm, you know, can you ensure that you can grow a seed crop without accidentally getting any of those seeds in that lot? You know, a lot of them will send the seed out for a purity test. What to do with overproduction and how payments are going to be made and when they're going to be made. So don't forget to negotiate on all of these things. All right. I think I did it in time, and we've got some time for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really clear and detailed information. Let's get to some questions. So early on in your presentation, Catherine had a question. Do you do germ tests before you send in your seed?
I usually don't, personally. The only time and the reason that I don't is, one, it's extra work, and, you know, if I'm growing something on contract, then, you know, they're going to do it for free. The times when I do germ tests and they're usually pretty quick at it, so, you know, it's not like I'm waiting for the answer. So the times when I do it is if I'll grow something on spec. So if I'm trialing something new that I think I might want to grow, but yeah, don't have a contract for it, you know, I'll grow it and harvest it. And if there's enough that's worth selling to anybody, then I germ test it so that, you know, as I'm trying to sell it, I can, you know, share that information. But yeah.
Great. We have another question there are some folks who are watching as a group, I believe, from the Dalhousie Seed Library in Nova Scotia, and they've asked, about potential contract loopholes that a beginner in seed growing should be aware of. Could you give any examples of contract loopholes that you're aware of or that you've fallen into before?
Oh, well, I don't know about loopholes. I mean, I tried to describe some of the issues. I mean, you know, I mean, there's never been anything that I was surprised by or, you know, unexpected in that sense, or that they were able to sneak something or I was able to sneak something. I mean, you know, there's oftentimes where, you know, the exclusivity piece, you know, where I've wanted to sell something, but because maybe I had overproduction or maybe I just had a ready market for it in another place that I couldn't, you know, and but that said, even though there was exclusivity, half the times when I ask, hey, I've got a little extra or I've got this other opportunity, would you mind if I sold it? Most of them say yes. So, yeah, no, I mean, I find, in my experience, everybody I've worked with has been a really good person to work with. You know, they're good people, they're good communicators, they're interested in our success as much as their own success, and so it's been a really positive experience.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I think sometimes the language of contract gets people kind of thinking in very strict legal terms, and you were very good in your presentation about emphasizing just the importance of open communication with your seed partner. Yeah. So Meg has also typed in a question that we could probably do a whole webinar on this. She's asked, can you comment, if possible, on average payment expectations from growers?
Well, I mean, it's going to vary, obviously, on the species, and it's going to vary on the variety. You know, I mean, I don't know. tomatoes could go anywhere from the low 200s to the upper 300s. Brassicas are in the 35 to 45 range. Lettuce is anywhere from 45 to 100. I mean, those are some basic prices per pound. I mean, and that's what you're negotiating, is what is the price per pound for a particular crop. For a beginning grower, what's really important to recognize is that not all varieties of the same species produce the same amount of seed, and I would say tomatoes are probably the best example of that. You can grow 100-foot row of one type of tomato and get a pound of seed, and you could grow 100-foot row of another variety of tomato and get 5 pounds of seed, and you've done a great job on both of them, and so part of the challenging piece of negotiating price, with something like a tomato is that uncertainty, especially if nobody has production records. And so that's something you would want to talk about and say, hey, well, is this a low-yielding or high-yielding variety? Or, and if they don't know, say, well, it's a little bit tricky, because if you get low yield, was that a genetic expression, or was that, part of your production practice? And that's where, obviously trust and a longer-term relationship helps come into play, because if you say, hey, well, I did everything perfect, and this is where pictures and records and being communicative and saying, hey, this is how it looks, this is what we're doing, and if it's all spotless with weeds and the plants look healthy and vigorous and, there's lots of fruit, but then there's still no seed, then you have a lot more leverage to say, well, this is just a very low-yielding variety. Can we up the price on this because I'm losing money? And, they want to keep you as a business partner. You're serving an essential function for their business. And so I think if you can show that you did your part, then they'll want to play their part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you were figuring out as a contract grower what your expectations would be financially, or in terms of money you would get per pound of different crops of seed, were there any resources or references that you found particularly helpful?
Well, there's not a lot of them out there that show average seed yield. I mean, Knott's Vegetable Handbook has a chart on seed yield that's decent. There's I'm forgetting the resource. It was also a Canadian publication in the last 10 years that interviewed small-scale seed growers and put a chart out. A lot of seed companies can tell you, some ballpark numbers of what to expect, either per acre or per, row foot, or et cetera, especially if they do their own production as well as contract out. But yeah, I mean, obviously talking to other seed growers is a great way to go, and then and then keeping track of your production, and if you do a good job of keeping records, after a few years you'll have a good idea. But yeah, getting started is always a little tricky.
That's consistent with what we've heard talking about this topic with other growers before too, is that you kind of have to feel your way around it. Another question from Dow Seed Library: how would you try to get customers who are loyal to your major competitors? I believe for someone who wants to step into this business, it would be an uphill battle for customer acquisition. Oh, I see. So I think, I think your comments earlier on about it being a really cooperative sector and people generally wanting to support each other's success would be relevant here. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that in terms of how much of an uphill battle it was for you in your initial days selling on contract.
It wasn't too hard. I mean, luckily I had a lot of experience already and a good reputation in the fresh market world, and I had connections in the seed world who were able that I was able to lean on to vouch for quality production. I mean, I'm not sure I totally understand the question. I mean, I go for several competing seed companies, and I think they're okay with that. I mean, I'm assuming my customer is the seed company.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and they're gonna obviously work with other seed farmers, and I'm not really too worried about that. If I have good quality and I have a good relationship, they're gonna keep coming back. I don't. Yeah, I mean, and oftentimes I should say, seed companies, they're not gonna, if they need 100 pounds of a particular variety, they're gonna usually contract 50 pounds with me and 50 pounds with somebody else. Just because that kind of saves, if one of us has a crop loss, then that doesn't mean they don't have the variety. They just have less of it. But that, a lot of times they'll spread it out for a while. I mean, if you're consistent in successfully producing a variety over a while, eventually they'll put more and more of their eggs in that basket. But, they've got to deal with risk management as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's really great, Sebastian. Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone who submitted questions. If you have residual questions, you can always try typing them in, and if we have time at the end of the webinar, we'll get to those. Aaron, I do see your question about seed disease, and just in order to keep us moving and on topic, what I'll do is I'll type in some resources that we know of on seed diseases, and if Sebastian wants to pipe in during Patrice's presentation, then we can kind of address that as a community through the chat pod. So for now, I guess I'm going to go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Patrice Fortier. Patrice was born in Montreal. After studying art, he got involved in the Îlot Fleury Collective Gardens, which is a guerrilla gardening project in the Saint-Roch neighborhood in Quebec City. From that came a singular pursuit that combined art and horticulture. In 1998, he left the city behind to settle in the county of Kamouraska in eastern Quebec and completed a diploma in market farming at the Institut de Technologie Agroalimentaire, or ITA, which is in La Pocatière. In 2001, inspired by Canada's Heritage Seeds Program and permaculture, Patrice founded the poetic farming project La Société des Plantes, whose main activity is producing certified organic seeds adapted to his cold and windy region. So thanks very much, Patrice, for being here. That is your first slide.
Hello, and thanks for the invite. So I joined this map because most people don't know where Kamouraska is. So it's the northern tip of the St. Lawrence River Valley of really good soils that go all along the St. Lawrence River. There's a quite narrow strip. It's getting narrower and narrower as you go north. So it's a farming and fishing neighborhood. So it's a coastal climate that is way cooler than in the Montreal area, and quite windy, which is one of the main challenge for seed production. But it also is, as I've been discovering for the past, I've been here for 20-something years now, so there's a lot of crops that will do better with a fair amount of wind anyway, well, less fungal diseases and stuff. Anyway, when I moved here at first, I didn't think I would have, it wasn't a long thought over project to have a seed business. I didn't really know what I was going to come here. It came from my art practice, and I became a full-time gardener, and I wanted to achieve self-sufficiency. So seeds, it's just that Seeds of Diversity Canada, I just became conscious of the seed situation in the world, and I just thought I had to do something. And I joined in as a member, and I just got hooked, like many of us. And but I was following a class at the Institut de Technologie Agroalimentaire. That's the oldest. It's the agricultural school in La Pocatière. Is actually the oldest farm school in Canada. But the funny thing is that the teachers there told me that we couldn't produce seeds in our area, that it was impossible. So we're 47.5 parallel, and they said that people have tried and it didn't really work, and the quality was not good, so that I should forget that. So okay, I said okay, but I kept that in mind, and I didn't really know when I started my farm project that it would really become a seed catalog mainly. So I started to grow vegetables for the plants that I was mainly attracted to were okay, I'm not with a good arrow. Were mainly plants that are I was practicing permaculture and permanent plantings at the time more than cultivating the traditional carrots and potatoes and peas, which I did also cultivate, but my main interest was toward perennial plants and perennial plantings, forest gardening, and I was still doing like work on other people's property to transform their gardens into food gardens. So I didn't buy the land that what you're seeing, this sky view is my gardens like 10 years ago or something, but it still looks like that kind of. So you see the position of the St. Lawrence River, which is like 3 kilometers north. And so the wind is a little less, I mean, the northeast wind is very, very strong, but with the trees you see on the left, it makes for a really good wind protection. So I've been cultivating also traditional vegetables in these rotations on the left there. So I've been doing a fair amount of trials after I bought the property, and I realized that the soils were amazing, and although they were in a really, really bad condition, but the late autumn frost made seed harvest possible in many ways that a little 4 kilometers away south, more up in the mountains, it would have been impossible. And closer to the St. Lawrence River would have been impossible because most of the crops wouldn't have had enough heat during so the microclimate in these further away regions is very, very important because it's all in the details. So I realized that I could grow way more things than I could be able to grow. I mean, I had way more choice than I thought. So the area here, Kamouraska, is a very it's very big on food production. It grew with the first farm school in La Pocatière. So there's a lot of, well, mainly dairy farming, but it used to be a fruit, plum, and small fruit and apple. It was a big orchard area. So plant growing has always been big here, and the idea of heritage, the architectural heritage, the traditional eel fishing, all the idea of heritage is very strong. So I knew that would help me because I'm not such a big marketing brain. It was a very personal project at the beginning. I didn't have like such a business a business view of it that was so strong, but I figured that if I had a heritage plant project in a heritage neighborhood, that would help. I mean, it would make sense and it would make a global image. So also because of the farming that's around, it's also a touristic route in the summer. So along the St. Lawrence River, there are plenty of restaurants and cafes. So there's an exploration of food. So being a farmer of kind of different products that I've been discovering through the years, this helped to develop the touristic, the restaurants, and it helps to develop the menus along the coast. So we've been working together. So they talk about us and we talk about them, and I don't feel alone developing my things. So the restaurants have always been a great help. Testing the products at first, and then when you do seed growing, you rogue out a lot of plants. So we always say eat the rest, keep the best and eat the rest in English. So eat the rest, it goes to the restaurant. So it's it's really helpful to have a set of nearby places where you can dispose of these if you don't have a mouth wide enough. So the gardeners in the Gaspé Peninsula and the northern area, all along the St. Lawrence River, the Côte-Nord, Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, even the Maritimes, New Brunswick, they have similar growing conditions, and I just thought that they would benefit from my growing selections, my seed selections here. And I realized that there was a man in 1949 who did exactly that, but it was peculiar because he was like the only of his kind, I found out, because there wasn't such a thing as a small seed grower and a small seed grower and company, that because he would sell to gardeners directly. And he had developed a market all along the New Brunswick and all the northern East Quebec. And people knew I realized he was quite known. And but it's people who are now like in their 80s that still remember him. And the funny thing is I realized that he was an artist also. So I think he was quite a visionary. He had to shut down his business because he was also working at the experimental farm in La Pocatière, so that would have been a conflict with his working for the government, because they were experimental farms then, not anymore. So it's funny because my catalog, my first catalogs were really in the spirit of that Heritage 1949 catalog. I really wanted to work with, not to pretend it's old, but it was mainly a text catalog. And I think these are things that were, this is the beginning in 2001 when I started the business. These were companies that were selling seeds in these years. So we see a collection of seed packs. Some of them, like in the bottom left, are like, this is a French company that was Cocopelli before. It was called Terre de Semence. They were a text pack also, and they gave a fair amount of information, like the year it was harvested, and iMowing didn't give the year, but it gave the germination rate. I think these are all marketing. They're important. Me as a client, it's the type of thing that I like to know. Like if I didn't know the year it was harvested, I was happy to know the germination rate, at least, not just the number of seeds. The number of lot, I didn't really care, but to have an idea of the living, what I could expect from these plants, from these seeds. So this gave me an idea how to develop then. That was in iMowing was one of my first provider of seeds. Thomas Eddy was in England. He was specialized in true antique vegetables, like skirret. My first skirret seeds came from him. And he played the game of pretending to be like like Thomas Eddy Esquire. He was really like pretending. He played the image of really retro. The J.L. Hudson was a very peculiar seed catalog that distributed Frank Morton seed at the beginning. That's how I discovered Frank Morton of Wild Garden Seeds. So these were more like with an apothecary library aesthetics. And that appealed to me. So more than like the Garden City Seeds pack that looks more like a pill, like something from the drugstore, or like to me. The seeds were great though. But so that helped me build an image for La Société des Plantes. And it was funny when I realized that Lucien Dubé had been there before, and some sentences of my first catalog are almost the same, describing the people who live in cooler areas, that having seeds that are grown in a similar climate was a good start for them. Or like it's like he said that already. So this was my first catalog. So I'm just showing one page to give an idea. I decided to change the way, to use a way to classify my plants that are not just vegetables or ornamental, flowers and vegetables. Often we see that ornamental versus edible. I chose to be like a botanical catalog, so that's why we see the botanical families, and then the plants are listed with their Latin name, and it's mainly text. There was a couple of pictures, but it's all written. So some people will really go for color photography, and I've probably lost a lot of clients that didn't like that. They didn't want to read that much. And I've also this allowed me to be more, as I was getting critical about the quantitative aspect of many seed catalogs, bigger seed catalogs, always telling us about the width and the length and the weight, and I'm not very good with numbers, so I just I see the seed catalog more like a meeting agency between the gardeners, and you try to provide the plant to someone who will recognize them. So they want that plant instead of the neighboring plant because of this uh, aspect, and it could be very sentimental, and often it has nothing to do with the size or the numbers. So sometimes I've been writing some odd descriptions also, like my parsnip student is like not, it's such a long student, it's such a long parsnip, it's a very old breed of parsnip. It has nothing to do with nowadays parsnip because it's very hard to harvest if you don't have a deep soil. But so it looks like a whip. So I just, I even write about, I don't just write about the taste, I write about the idea that it would be the perfect instrument to whip the ones you love. So this is just it's a detail, but it's also like opening the text towards something else than just having a vegetable to eat. Like the plant can also be something else, something you do, performance, art. Like, it could be, it's just opening the drawers of classification. So that was my view. My marketing at the beginning was that. So it was obviously not pretending to be a big seed company. So the plantings here look a bit like that. So some plants do better than others in these type of plantings. It's the size of the garden hasn't changed much in 15 years, 16 years now. It's even got a bit smaller and more dense, and better controlled. I know where everything is, and I'm perfectly conscious of all the borage there in the alleys, and the harvest. It gives more and more seeds every year. Being better managed, so this will lead you to choose plants that do well in such planting. They're not necessarily the same plants that will work in a mechanized planting. So this choice of plants have helped me build a community of plants in my garden that is also a product. This idea of gardening is also something that your clients will, that can appeal to some clients. Because at the beginning, in 2000, the permaculture classes were all over the place, but it was still more alternative, I would say. It's scaling up now. This type of gardeners are in the suburbs now. The horticultural society organized talks. they will invite you to talk about your plantings if you have something different to offer. So a lot of people now will try different things. So a lot of the perennial cultures will be in that group. So skirret, first year I've sold skirret seeds. I've sold 25 packs. Now it will be in the hundreds because there's a natural growing of these alternative crops. So in this type of garden, even the absinthe here on the lower right, which is crop protection in my garden, is also one of my best, one of my really good sales. It's one of my best seed sales. So you have nothing to do. You know, you just have to harvest the seeds and prevent the absinthe to grow all over the place. So it will be helpful all along the season when you have insect problems, and then you will just be happy. It's not even harvested yet. It's one of the last seed you will harvest. The deal is to clean it properly, which is the hard thing to do. So a lot of these plants are my best friends in my garden. I have nothing to do, marshmallow, absinthe, and a lot of people are interested in these plants. All the herbalists, people who study herboristerie, herbalism, in herbalism classes, they often need to buy seeds and try to grow the plants. So it's good to have a foot in the herbalism world. It helped me a lot. I realized at some point that my perennial aromatic medicinal plant was really outgrowing my expectations at the same time as the vegetable sales were getting higher, because I have to say that I wanted to have a small business at the beginning, and it just keeps growing without my help in a way. It's just, I mean, I help it, but it's outgrowing itself. So it's in a crisis. It's in an adolescence crisis right now. I try to keep it. Calm, and so here you see Soissons on the right, on the left. I mean, the Soissons bean. This is something funny because sometimes you can, if you find the right traditional varieties from another country, like this is from France, sometimes these varieties are hard to find in their own country. So a lot of the, I was selling a bean from Normandy, and so most of my seed orders for this bean at first were from France, because even though it was a typical crop there, they didn't have any seed company offering it. So my regional seed market isn't just regional. I mean, it's actually, it's not so immediately regional. It took a while before I become known as a seed source locally. Like Lucien Dubé that I talked about earlier, he was a man that was born here. I'm a Montrealer, and I came here after my art studies. I'm like, nobody knew me, and they probably thought I was not working at all behind my edges. People didn't know what I was doing until I appeared in a TV farm show. So that was like 7 years after the beginning of the farm. So after having seen me in a real farm show, the farmers around here have started to put a name on my face and know that I was actually working. And so they've been slowly starting to buy my seeds also. But my market has been more regional in a very broad sense, of people who live in cooler areas. So that could be the top of it could be a village in the Pyrenees Mountains. My website is in French, my catalog is in French. As it is now, it's all only in French. So most of my sales will be from French-speaking areas. And when they do an internet search in French, they will find, for Chervy, which is the French name for skirret, they will find me first before the skirret seed sellers. But it's good to have. When I'm ready, when I have a better system, sales system, I will be bilingual. But I think the sales will explode too much quickly, and I'm not ready for this now. So I was showing about the very dense planting. So also your plantings might be nice to look at. So this is a corner of the garden. I've been opening the garden to tours, to not just the local people, but the tourists, or it's often these customers from the website who will want to come and see how all these things are done. So usually when they see your garden, when they see how things have been made and all the amount of work involved, they usually suddenly think that $3.50 for a seed pack is very cheap, and they usually bond to you after. I mean, when they see how you imply yourself in your work, and I make people taste many things on the way. In every row, people can taste the products, the plants. So usually they want to buy seeds right at the end of the garden tour. They want to buy seeds from you from these plants, or they will take notes and buy them after. So that's a really, this has proved, it's kind of tiring because it's the summer and you work, but I mean, you're tired from the gardening, but it's for me, it's worth it. I make people pay to do this. It's like $15 for a 2-hour tour, and I take small groups. But nobody complains about the price. It's some people give me even more after they see all the work. They say, "Oh, you deserve more." So since I was reluctant to do this at first, and I don't want to do this too much because it's a little it could be a pain. So part of my work is not just producing. I don't produce on a big scale as you've seen, but I do a lot of I do some breeding. I mean, I would do just that because that's my favorite part of the work. Research, experimentation. So here you see a planting of red romaine lettuce, which is called Rouge d'hiver. And I had 2 stock seeds, different stock seeds, one from Cocopelli and one from Germinance, which is a biodynamic seed grower in the Loire Valley in France. So, and I realized that the 2 strains were really different. And High Mowing sell another Rouge d'hiver, which is white-seeded, and it's also different. So I've realized the danger of having it's not so dangerous. It's just that you have to be aware that the stock seed can vary. Like the same variety can vary a lot between different seed companies. And also, what I've been doing with this red romaine is that I've sown it in September, and this is a picture taken late July or August, but this year, and it had been sown in mid-September the year before. So obviously, I've lost a lot of plants because I didn't protect them over winter, and that was on purpose. And because I want to build, that's how I've been building my reputation in my regional seed sales, is to grow vigorous, strong strains. And if it needs too much attention, then I usually drop it and try something else. So these red romaine looked fabulous, and I've lost some after the picture was taken, but most of the seed bearers were 7 feet tall and I didn't stake them, and we've had like 80-kilometer winds, and they didn't break. So that's how I build my stock, and I think that's the base of the reputation. So the volume of seed produced in this was a 50 feet. It's 4 feet wide by 50 feet, and I would say that half of it has been producing lettuce seeds. So the gaps of the lettuce that were dead, I just put like other things in for the summer. But this gives me I don't feel like I lie to my clients when I tell them that I provide them strong stuff. So also, if you have time, I'm alone with this business. So I mean, I have gardeners, but I do all the sales, all the office work, all the decision making, and I prepare all the packs and everything myself. And so I just don't have time to go ask for grants often, but there are grants of research, R&D. I mean, apparently it's really hard the first time, and then you just do it again every year, and it's easy. So I've been inspired a lot at first by my belly, I would say, like my appetite to eat different foods, and I like semi-wild. A lot of my plants are semi-wild plants with less fussy plants, and sometimes you have to discover ways to prepare them. They're different. So this is a relative of the corn salad. It's called Phaedia cornucopia, Horn of Plenty. It's its nickname. It's from Algeria or Morocco. It grows in the olive grove in the Mediterranean, and it's actually a really wonderful plant that is easier than mâche to grow in the summer, and it's a perfect bee plant. I had heard of this plant in very old books because I collect old food books, and then the chef Michel Brasse, which is a chef from in France, one of the first chefs to work with to cook with heirloom vegetables and wild vegetables in the 80s, one of the first to be known for this. And so I finally found seed of this at Chiltern Seeds in England then the first time. And it's a good thing I've been growing it ever since because they dropped it. And apparently I'm the only commercial source for this plant. Only some botanical freaks will exchange seeds of this, more like a botanical oddity or flower. But I find it's a beautiful vegetable. So being the only one to have this has made it that the chef who inspired me to grow it at first has been ordering seeds of it. He found me on the net and he saw that I was offering seeds and he ordered it. So I was amazed. So that's something, and it's interesting for the development of my business. So to have those clients abroad who find me because I have these things that I'm the only one to have, and then they'll buy other things from you. So this has been also, it's not just a seed sale. I don't think growing this plant it's so economically viable in itself. It's a lot of work. Sometimes there's a reason why it doesn't appear in the seed catalogs. Some plants are really finicky. To grab the seeds of this, it will do one seed after another. I have to work with fabrics on the soil because it will throw its seeds one at a time, and so it's worse than borage. So it's hard to just cut it and hang it upside down. You won't get many seeds if you do that. So it's still pretty wild. So it's not that it will, I mean, the seed sales will probably pay for the work, but you won't make much profit from the seed sales from these plants, but they build your image, I think. I think I've paid for publicity in 15 years, less than 5 times I've paid publicity, and it was really to help the papers or the magazines, or I don't have the urge to put publicity, but for me, adding a plant like this is marketing, and it will show your image. So among my mingling with chefs, I've been meeting a man who came from Kamouraska, my hometown, at the beginning, and he just happened to have one of the best restaurants in the country. It's in Montreal, called the Toqué. And he came to me at some point to see if I had vegetables, and I would have never dared to go see him with my vegetables. And so that was the beginning of a very I felt very privileged to just sell vegetables to him, and he felt privileged to have vegetables from my garden and from his hometown. So this was very interesting because he realized that he's in this book. This is a book that has been sold in many countries, and there's 5 chapters, and I open one of the chapters, and because he recognized that the people who grow the seeds are actually at the beginning of the recipe, and we're at the beginning of the chain because the farm schools don't realize that, but some chefs seem to do, like him. So here we see both. This is a sowing angelica ritual that I do with a seed head, angelica seed head wig. So this was interesting for me at that time, when that year, like around 2009 or something. It's because it kind of blended in my artist practice with the farming. So this is me, but I think every one of us we all have a personal practice. And when you're a small regional business, well, you can either play the game of a big business or you could play it really personal. And I'm really bad at playing business, so I just made it really personal, and I allow myself to do crazy things with the seeds like this. And it just made me appear in his book, and so this has been a really good free publicity for me. So I'm just saying like that just allow yourself to do those crazy things. When you do a seed crop, you can sell other parts of the same plant, like the angelica seeds. I sell a good amount of angelica seeds. It's really one of the plants I adore. And the roots have been, it's an autumn harvest. We're about to harvest the roots. It's just that you could grow, when you have angelica, you have a grove. Obviously, you can't have just a couple of plants. It looks like a little forest. So you always have too many plants. You will never sell seeds of all your plants unless you become a really big seed grower. So it's good to just dip in between the plants and harvest the roots of one plant on 2 or one plant on 3. And these are pretty valuable on the herbalism market. I sell them for a distillery, for a dry gin. And so apparently they're much better than what you can find on the big market for those. So that's being involved in this gin recipe has been. They've talked about the fact that a seed company was behind the choice of I helped develop the recipe with parsnip infused. So I've been involved in distillery to a certain point, and it makes for instant sales of seed production byproducts. So it's a sale, and it's also good for the image of the seed company. So it could be many other things than the roots. So I'm going to end with just I'm showing you the real numbers of the sales, the evolution of sales between 2008 and 2016. So there's only the first 3 months of 2016 here, because the rest isn't done yet. So it keeps evolving, and the good thing is that the production costs are about the same, except for employees. I hire more employees now, but the basic costs of the production are the same, and the sales always go up because people come back, they buy more, there's always more clients. And so it's interesting to just survive, because for the past 8 years, in my own story, the first 8 years, I didn't even cover the production expenses. So it means that for 8 years, you have to borrow money and work like 15 to 18 hours a day, nonstop, and borrow money to work that much, believing that you're going to stick your head out of the water. So I wasn't even thinking of making it bigger then. I was just thinking of being even, and because that time you eat well at least. And but now after breaking it even after 8 years, so 2001 or something, 2009, I mean, the beginning of this chart, I've started to hire to buy more seeds to sell and try to hire some contract seed growers, which is a hard thing in a remote seed production area like here, because first, the people who will want to grow seed for you will usually not be organic certified. So it was a choice for me to sell organic certified seeds. And I'm starting to think that it's more important to have local seeds than to have true certified seeds. So I've found some people now who want to grow seed for me, but I will present them on my new website to show the people. They'll decide if they want to have seeds from them or not, but they won't be organic certified, some of the crops. So this is my new direction. I'm building more on the regional aspect than on the organic certified aspect, although 80% of what I sell will still be organic certified. So you see that the sales are January, February, March, April and May are the big seed sale months. So being alone right now still to deal with the seed sale, I mean, I have a little bit of help, but I'm still alone to do the seed fairs and all. It doesn't give you much time to do anything else, or like to even give talks or else. But June, July, August, so that's the production. So it's good thing seed sales are lower, but you see that September, October, November, December, it's been climbing up. That's the, well, maybe not December, but September, October, that's the autumn sales. That's the rising of the permaculture plants. It's like the fact that suburban gardeners now want to do permaculture. I mean, or they want to have perennial, edible, ornamental, or they just want to have perennial plants. So I'm offering a little more of these, because these were my passion at first. But to survive, I had to concentrate on carrots, which I did. But now I'm offering myself the pleasure to dive back into my my perennial plants, because the demand is there now. So that's it. I think I never wanted to push the sales too much all along. I guess I could have done things quicker by buying publicity in a way, but I think I've had a lot of help from magazines and free. It's always free publicity, and yeah, it was mainly magazine. Well, and there was a movie, a documentary shot here also, but each of these appearances do a lot. They do, like, if you're in a farm show on TV, I've even said no to 2 TV shows after that, because yes, the seed sales will go up, but you can have like dozens of cars rushing to, like, coming to your home. And that's, I mean, you have to think about it first, because TV attracts a lot of people. Do you want to have these people as customers, all these people as customers? I'm more of a slow food, slow sales, slow marketing. So I think that's it. If you have questions, I'm there.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrice, for that presentation. We're actually running a little bit over time, but I think that's on account of 2 really robust presentations that you guys have delivered to us today. So thank you for that. Patrice, you have some nice comments from Rochelle there in the chat pod, so I'll invite you to have a look at that. Not a question, but just some comments. I think what the 2 of you together have done is give us a view of 2 very different models of being in the seed business. And given how much diversity there is in seeds and on our farms across the country, I think it's really good to give people an idea of the diversity that's also possible within a seed business model. So rather than open it up to further questions, I think in the interest of time, I will just say thank you so much for being part of today's webinar and sharing your experiences and knowledge and seed strategies with us. It's a super duper busy time of year for people in the seed business, and so given that, I especially appreciate your taking the time to spend with us, and that goes to all of you also who joined us on the line today. Thank you for being here. If you have any feedback about these webinars or how we could improve future webinars, please do be in touch with me. My contact information is on your screen. So Patrice, Sebastian, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Great.
À bientôt.
Bye, everybody.